Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hey there, Thunder Buddies and Travelers down Thunder Road. It's us, Days of Thunder, the WCW Thunder rewatch podcast that you didn't ask for, but we did anyway, coming to you as part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network and powered by alargemanappears.com. It's me, your host, your first draft bad promo on Thunder Road, Dave Ryan, and I'm joined as I am every week by my faithful co-host, Stagger Lee Malone. Lee, how the fuck are you?
I am good. It feels odd for back doing another Thunder. It seems like a while since we've done a Thunder.
We have been stuck in this condensed 2-week period of WCW history for like a month and a half now.
Is it that long? It probably is that long, actually, yeah.
Because we've had 2 Nitros, 2 Thunders, a pay-per-view, and Beyond the Mat, all in a 2-week period.
And if you had told me we hadn't done a Thunder in like fucking 8 weeks, I would have been, yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. It's been interesting. Do you know what I mean? It's I do enjoy when we take our little detours and talk about the historically significant Nitros, and especially if you're a subscriber over at largemanappears.com, you know me and Lee love reviewing movies as well. But there is something quite refreshing about returning to the regular, if you want to call it a slog, of watching just Thunders. We've got a nice little run of them now. I think pretty much up until the pay-per-view. We're not diverting off Thunder Road again. And it's a good long while. I know people in the Discord were asking us about this, like what are our planned Nitros. And look, maybe it's a thing. We have this file that we talk about that we sometimes remember to look at, that has our episode schedule. That kind of keeps us abreast of the stuff we said we were going to cover, so that we try not to miss anything. And I've thought sometimes about sharing that with people, but then sometimes I'm like, oh, do we want to spoil, you know what I mean, what we're going to do? Because sometimes for some listeners, they don't like knowing, oh, they're going to do a Nitro about this, especially people that aren't as au fait with this period of time. So I kind of go back and forth on it, but we do literally until March of 2000. I don't think we have any more Nitros on the deck.
Oh wow, that's a good long that's a good long time period without a Nitro. But yeah, I think there's going to be
pretty much the rest of this year in real life.
It's like once we do get into like the really bad points of 2000s, there is like some can't miss Nitros, and they probably are fairly close to each other. So
and fairly obvious ones as well,
yeah.
So, but yeah, I guess before we get into what was a it was a Thunder. I'll tell you that. We're definitely back in familiar territory. I suppose a little bit of chat up top. I celebrated a birthday.
You did? So you're another year older?
I am now 35. An interesting one. People ask me, was it kind of people younger than me, like my volunteers in work, were talking about like, is 35 one of those years where you have a bit of a wobble about it? And I was like, not really. You know, it will be a shame to not be able to credibly say I'm in my early 30s anymore. That's a little bit of a shame. But it was nice. I got to kind of completely plug out for the weekend, as I'm somebody that's terminally online. So we got to go to a remote cabin in a lake on the west of Ireland, in W.B. Yeats country, right near Innisfree. And it was really nice. No internet. There was still enough. There was a TV signal, so I was able to watch some of the football, of which more anon. But it was really good. That part of the world, Sligo, turns out really nice grub going on there. Found a few nice places and just was able to unwind, which I think was badly needed. It certainly refreshed me in a way that the World Championship Wrestling does not.
It's actually Joe. It's kind of an underrated part of the country. It's like it's well situated if you want to do kind of stuff on the west coast, and like you said, there's a nice town there and a few decent spots, and it's also close enough to the north that you can make a day trip out of it and kind of go up and back. And
yeah, a lot of people do. Now, there was a lot of GA fans passing through. Armagh were playing somewhere nearby, I could tell by a bunch of flags this weekend. But yeah, you can see by the Northern Irish registration plates.
Are you sure they weren't a bunch of Holland fans that got lost?
This is very true. It could have been some of the Orangi. Which I would have been able to bond with them a lot more than Armagh fans, to be fair.
That's true.
But you mentioned it there, and it was something that was kind of came up as a topic of discussion in our Discord. We won't talk about it long, being conscious of not everybody being a huge fan of the football. But the European Championships have started.
They have.
I was being asked if I was going to do any sort of preview content, as I often do over on Link to the Cast, but we honestly ran out of time this year. Before it, with my illness a few weeks ago, kind of scuppering things on that front. But how have you been enjoying it so far, Lee? Have you caught much of the football? It's kind of, for people who aren't familiar, the first part of a European Championships or a World Cup in soccer is great because it's literally 3 games of football a day. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Tomorrow is the first day where there will only be 2 games in a day since Friday. So, I've been really enjoying it. I think I've seen all except for... I didn't see Spain-Croatia because I was playing my own game on Saturday afternoon. And I did not see much of Ukraine and Romania today. But other than that, I've watched pretty much all of the games, or had 50% of an eye on the games, as I'm doing stuff with the kids or whatever. But yeah, some of the football's been great. I've really enjoyed the opening couple of days.
A vibes-based football is back in a big way, which I love.
Yes.
There's
nobody strangling the game like Pep style, which is so refreshing.
Yeah. Even we're there's a game just finishing up in the background to peer behind the curtain as we're watching this, where France are currently 1-0 up on Austria, and Austria have been kind of they've been as close as any team has to trying to do that kind of strangling football to a dead halt, but they're doing it in an interesting way to watch. So
yes,
again, a bit more vibes based than football by mathematics, which I enjoy.
Also, I always shout them out, but the Totally Football Show has been producing some great content every night after the games are over. So that's been getting a listen every morning on the way to work or while I'm doing stuff at the house.
Yeah. So you might hear us mention it on and off for the next couple of weeks. These tournaments typically run just shy of a month. So,
well, you know what?
Trying to fit this in around our busy wrestling schedule.
For the next few weeks, we're going to have the Euros. Then we will have the Olympics.
Yep.
And then the real football's back.
Yeah.
So, the sport does not end.
Football is permanent.
Much to my wife's chagrin, and it just does not end.
Yeah. I was actually out yesterday at the end of my birthday when I came back from Sligo. A buddy of mine popped over. We went out for dinner. And he's so not a sports guy. It's so funny because he's like a proper outdoorsman, and people assume because he's outdoor and he's athletic that he must love sports. And he fucking hates organised sports that you read about. And he's just like, I just don't get it. He's just like, I can get after the group stages of a European Championship or a World Cup, because it's like you lose one match, you're out. He's like, I will never understand a league format where it's like you play everybody twice every single year. I was just like, yeah, it's one of those sports where either you're in it from when you're a kid or you're not.
Yeah, it's either ingrained in you or it's not. Yeah.
People who come to it later in life are in the minority by far. And that's fine. That's fine. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Neither is the sport of professional wrestling, my friend. And that is what, sadly, we'll have to talk about. Look, to kind of, I suppose, give an intro to this show. I didn't think this was the worst Thunder I've ever seen. I do think it's not the worst wrestling I've ever seen. It's not the most mad or bored I've been by a show, but one particular element of it I think was bad, and that was pretty much every time anyone spoke out loud on this show. Like, every in-ring and backstage promo, I think without exception, was horrible on this show. I think everybody who stepped in on commentary was horrible. I think everybody on commentary was horrible.
Yeah, like I gotta say, I'm pretty pissed at you, because that was going to be my hot take, was that this was not a terrible show. I don't want to say I liked a few things on the show, but like, I didn't hate what happened on the show. Other than, like you said, the commentary and the promos on the show were absolutely horrendous. But the actual, like, the wrestling was short. Don't get me wrong, it was still a Vince Russo wrestling show. So there was nothing to really sink your teeth into in that sense.
Yeah.
But the way the show flowed was not awful.
No, it was kind of light and breezy. And I do have a theory about that I will get to. There's a line on commentary that tees up why I think this was the way it was.
Okay.
But let's not jump the gun straight away anyway. Right, shall we talk about what was in the Observer this week? Because it's a fairly... I kind of gave you a little sneak preview off air saying that there's basically a lot in it. Just it's a little bit interesting. The first thing I want to talk about is, if you've been listening to the show for any length of time, you'll know the week after a pay-per-view, Dave will run a poll to see what readers of the newsletter thought about it. And I found it very interesting how divisive Halloween Havoc was. For a show that we said was pretty bad, with the exception of one match in particular, with some horrible booking on it, up and down. It was almost split down the middle. We have thumbs up 43%, thumbs down 45.3%.
That's I can't believe it was so split. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, I would have guessed that if I were to guess, okay, one of the two was like edging it, I would guess thumbs down, but I wouldn't have said it was this close.
Like,
I think maybe it speaks to what we've said about Vince Russo, is that people want to tune in for the chapter one. And the strength of, okay, they're trying a bunch of shit this first week or two, got people in, and they were like, yeah, stuff happened, but maybe it's a thing where it's more obvious to us now in 2024 that we know a lot of the mad stuff that was set up either doesn't pay off or pays off in a way that makes us mad. And it's easier for us to not buy into any of it. But maybe there's like a fool's hope amongst a lot of people that were watching this who were Observer subscribers at the time that, like, this might lead somewhere interesting.
I think there's, possibly also the fact that at this point in 99, like, it probably wasn't as believed as, like, it wasn't as common knowledge that Russo was the wild ideas guy that had to be filtered. It was more that, well, this is the guy that gave Vince his fucking success.
I mean, we were reading Dave talking about it, and it's like he's a guy who's still credited as being like the architect of the boom in WWF.
Like Austin and The Rock loved him. All the top guys loved him. Like the lower card guys loved him because he gave them stuff to do. Like him leaving was seen as a loss. Yeah,
and like it's funny because there's a poll here as well because No Mercy has just happened, and No Mercy got 93.1% thumbs up by comparison. So like it's interesting to see where the two of these promotions are at the time.
Like that again, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago.
People were into the tit.
Like other than the ladder match, what was that main? Was that the 6-pack challenge main event? We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago, I remember.
Did we look up the card at the time?
I think we did, and we both went, that's a fucking horrendous card.
Yeah. I feel like we did. I'm just going to refresh our memory. This is how fucking broken we are. Oh, this was Triple H, Stone Cold, No Holds Barred.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a terrible card. I'm just looking up and down at this card. I'm not going to read it out again in case we already did, but it's a fucking terrible card. Yeah, it's good housekeeping.
That's right.
Good housekeeping was on this show, yeah.
But yeah, fucking 93.1%. That fucking, what a weird Observer readership there was back then. But yeah, so let's jump into what's actually in the Observer this.
Yeah, so the lead story is interesting, and like I just kind of wanted to mention it without getting too deep into it, and it's a big, long gush about what a success Mick Foley's book has been.
Okay.
Because he's now a New York Times bestseller, so it's the lead story kind of going like, who could have predicted that a wrestler would write a book and it would be this wildly successful? And he says like the only thing that's bad about it is the full title of it being Have a Nice Day, A Tale of Blood and Sweat Socks is a little bit cringe, basically, Dave is saying. But other than that, they kind of said that he goes, as everyone knows by now, what turned out was something special. Aside from the embarrassing title, nothing remains from the original idea. So it's like, hold on, where is it? It says, I think there was like an idea of that there would be a series of like, because didn't Stone Cold do the Stone Cold Truth, and there's this idea that the big stars in the Fed would have like semi-kayfabed autobiographies.
Remember The Rock had one, The Rock Says.
Yeah, The Rock Says, yeah. And like by the time Foley's book came out, it turned out to be like a far more honest, far less kayfabed book than they had anticipated, but it was all for the better because it still is, like, remains, if not the gold standard, fairly close to the gold standard for wrestling autobiographies.
Who was it that had one after? Oh, Kurt Angle had one not too long after Foley's as well in 2000. He had his like kind of kayfabe life story.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I don't think anybody could have anticipated Foley's story. Like fucking Mick Foley, like nobody could have anticipated his life story being as captivating as it was. But I think just the way he told it, it's the way he tells it.
Yeah. And much like in wrestling, no one really could have predicted that that was the character that would become like the working class hero for a lot of people, you know. In a kind of like, yes, Stone Cold was the guy for everybody, but like in terms of emotional connection with the crowd, Foley was right behind him at the very peak of business. I thought what was a really interesting one as well is the first of 3 cable network television biopic specials on pro wrestling personalities on NBC ran this week, Headliners and Legends, and they started off with Vince. Wow. Now I'm not going to get too deep into it, but it's just interesting to me, one, that like he described it as being similar to the A&E history pieces, and I just thought it was funny because now obviously WWE are firmly in bed with A&E doing
history pieces
bios of fucking everybody. And I just thought it was interesting that at this time Vince would be the first one up. Now, like, just from reading through, it's a fairly kind of like, it presents Vince very well. So take from that what you will.
Yeah.
Take from that what you will. And And as well as that, I just thought, it's really interesting that this would come out around the same time as, like, Wrestling with Shadows has come out a little while ago. Beyond the Mat has just come out. There's talk in this issue about how Beyond the Mat is, like, they're gearing up. They did a limited theatrical run because they were aiming for Oscar noms, which they obviously didn't get. But yeah, just to come out with what sounds like a relatively sanitized version of Vince's history. And one of my favorite things ever, if you've never read Dave review something where he knows historical inaccuracies are happening, it's very funny because, like, he can't let a single one of them lie. So he goes on for, like, the guts of 10 pages about this hour-long MSNBC special. It's very funny. So the other main story, the new WCW direction became even more apparent with the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view show on 10/24 from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. The direction is throwing a lot of angles and surprises at the fans with a lot of last-minute card changes and concentrate a lot less on bell-to-bell or natural logical progression. For example, on the finishes, it seems more important to surprise fans with the results. Given as an example here is Brad Armstrong over Berlyn being the best example, but also Lex Luger over Bret Hart, although there was at least an argument about the logic to that one. Even if the reason fans would expect the loser to win was because it would make more logical progression based on who is getting the immediate push. The pushing of Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara, although to their credit they pushed the idea of themselves, the new hotshot writers who came from WWF, seems to be the going phrase, more than their names, was evident throughout the show. The argument that WCW is swimming in negative momentum and needs a facelift is strong, but even on WWF, you wouldn't get hit with the idea constantly during shows regularly about how the hot writers had just been hired. And that's very true. It's like one of the many issues I have with the powers that be thing is the fact it's now part of your company storyline how much WCW sucks and how much you need people from the WWF to make it good again. Because then to most fans, they're like, well, why don't I just watch the other guys then?
And isn't that the exact trap that Tony Khan fell into with MJF making AEW the heel? Like, you know, calling Tony Khan a fucking mark on TV and, you know, constantly referencing the other place.
One of the things, I have a lot of misgivings about what's happening with the Elite at the moment. Like, I don't think they've batted 1,000 by any stretch with that angle. However, one thing I will say is they've at least correctly positioned AEW as the faces.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like any time they've taken anybody on, it's Team AEW. So, it's like, you know, we talk about the WWE subtlety hammer. Like, it's a fucking subtlety sledgehammer here in WCW at this point, because it's constantly reinforced into your mind that this show is written by the two guys from up north and they're here to save this suck-ass company.
Yeah. To make up for the fact that they weren't going to deliver the advertised main event, they added a Goldberg versus Sting match at the end, partially to begin a Sting babyface turn, and did the old Vern Gagne trick of sending the fans home thinking they'd seen a world title change, only to watch TV to find out this wasn't the case. In looking at Gagne's business, admittedly how fans reacted to the same angles 2 decades ago is not for the most part relevant to how they would act today, because it's neither the same world nor the same business. It was okay in the short run, but eventually grew tiresome and hurt at the end. Very true. The Hogan angle, of which part 2 went down exactly as it was scripted weeks ago, to their credit, a lot of people who should know better also thought that this was unscripted, is at this point supposed to lead to a Hogan hiatus with the idea that he's not getting along with management. We kind of mentioned this on the pay-per-view where I read ahead. So the idea is that he's going to come back. Basically, it'd be the Steve Austin, which is fucking hilarious. It's interesting. We didn't go through the star ratings on the pay-per-view. We kind of forgot to do that. But I'll go through them quickly here. Disco Inferno, Lash LaRue got 1.25 stars. The tag team match, the
three-way
tag,
the
Filthy Animals, the Filthy Animals,
the First Family,
Harlem Heat, and the First Family got 1.5 stars. Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn got 3 stars, which I thought was a little generous. I thought that was fairly bang average, if I remember correctly. Brad Armstrong, Berlyn got a quarter of a star. Rick Steiner, Benoit got 1 3/4 stars. Total package, Bret Hart got a 1 star. You mean you'd have to go looking for a lot of Bret Hart matches that Dave would have given 1 star to. I'm going to skip over the bit where Dave is talking about Medusa's body in a bikini here. Bill Goldberg, Sid Vicious, 2.5 stars, which I thought was a little bit harsh for what
really
I thought
harsh.
was the best. It got second in the poll for best match on the show behind Saturn and Eddie. DDP and Ric Flair, 1 star. The Goldberg Sting, Goldberg Sting, 1.5 stars. Or no, sorry, half a star.
Can I just say, after hearing you read them out, I just want to send out a note to somebody.
Yeah.
Joe Coffey, be very fucking lucky it's not this Dave Meltzer that's writing your matches.
Yeah. Oh, good lord. Dave was a catty bitch when he didn't like something back in the day. Like, he is so much kinder on people now. He was
whinging
so,
over
again,
3.25 stars.
We've mentioned it before, but like, Dave went from 1997 to 2011 without giving 5 stars to a match at WWE.
Like,
not saying there was a huge amount of contenders for it, but
no.
like, fucking hell. So one of the things you'll be happy about, Lee, Sandman is back in ECW, which just all is right in the world.
Yes.
Pac is back. One of the largest pops in the history of the promotion. While Paul Heyman had been burying Fullington even before he was fired by WCW and claiming at one point just a few weeks ago that under no circumstances would he ever bring him back, the feeling always among everyone close to him was that if he's available, he'd be brought back immediately.
Of course, it's Paul.
Yeah.
He's speaking his line.
He's still technically under contract until December with WCW.
If you've never seen it, Sandman's return to ECW is fucking great. Also, he's still fucking shredded from his WCW run.
Yeah, he's still fucking yoked.
Yeah.
What do we got up next? I thought this is funny considering like what we know about him is that sorry, because this is scrolling quite a few pages down to other Japan notes. As expected, Ultimo Dragon announced his retirement on 10/20 because his hand was never able to recover after a botched up elbow surgery more than a year ago that at the time was supposed to be minor surgery. Dragon was officially fired on 9/7 by WCW. Since it was the WCW doctor who botched up the surgery that ended his career, it is considered likely that he will file a lawsuit against the company. So more court battles in WCW's future.
Here's something I wondered did that lawsuit result in the birth of Toryumon?
Oh, it'll be interesting to keep track of how that goes, because I don't even know if it ends up being filed. But we will keep track as Dave reports on it. Various news notes here and there. An update on the condition of Gordon Soley. It's not looking good. Basically, he's going to have an operation, leave him with a good chance of survival, but he'll never speak again. Very sad. Antonio Inoki is talking strongly about his proposed April show in North Korea airing on pay-per-view in the United States. Since Inoki is involved with New Japan, the politics of this would include whether New Japan and WCW continue the relationship, and if they do, if WCW complains about it out of courtesy to the relationship, they might not do it. We have some notes from where else are we here? Past. They did a lot of new angles on the 10/23 Philadelphia ECW Arena show. The show opened with Sign Guy Dudley changing his name to Lou E. Dangerously, doing an old Paul E. Dangerously gimmick with the cell phone, wearing the same kind of outfit that Paul E. would wear. He announced he was bringing back a former world champion to challenge Mike Awesome, who is currently in Japan. Because I read in the notes that he was wrestling in Japan during this week. It turned out to be Mikey Whipwreck, who Awesome squashed. including doing the over-the-top rope powerbomb through the table spot. So, yeah, we've got Louis dangerously happen. Vic Grimes was backstage at the show. He had a tryout before the show. Paul Heyman said he wasn't sold one way or the other on him.
That will end well.
Yes, end well for all parties. But that he'd probably come to Ohio this week for a second look. Mark Coleman, MMA's Mark Coleman, as it turned out, never came to New Orleans for a tryout. Heyman said that he may come to Philadelphia for the next ECW Arena show in late November, although Coleman had told people in the MMA world that after seeing what the guys in ECW do to their bodies, he wasn't interested this time. He'd prefer to be punched in the face for real than do what ECW is doing. That's great.
It's fucking fair.
Yeah, Tammy Linsich passed out backstage before she was scheduled to do this week's promos at the ECW Arena show. Again, you talk about sad stories. Taz has 2 matches left before he wraps up with the promotion at this week's TV taping, probably against Mike Awesome and the pay-per-view match against Rob Van Dam.
Well, that changes dramatically.
Yes, somewhat. Bill Bush has told WCW wrestlers before the 1025 Nitro that it was official that Nitro will go to 2 hours in January, which with the style of the show they're doing is a change for the better. He never said which 2 of the 3 hours would air, so what the time slot for Nitro is going to be. Will it fully go head to head with Raw, or will there be an hour unopposed?
They should do the most WCW thing possible and run 8 to 9, take an hour off, and do 10 to 11.
Well, it's not quite that bad, but Russo has insisted that he wants to do 9 to 11 p.m. with the idea that they can get more raunchy.
Yeah, of
but
course
WCW, but WCW, if it gets hot, will be giving up a great advantage by having the unopposed first hour. Like, is that to most people with any business sense, having 1 hour that goes unopposed against Raw is probably what you want. You want to beat Raw to the air and try and take viewers off them in the first hour because it will hurt them.
Yes, instead of looking at it as we need to be on later to be raunchier, you should have been looking at it as, okay, Monday nights now has 3 hours that are, carved out in most people's lives for wrestling. If we can get on an hour before them, we can hook these people.
Look, I will, there's a lot I will say about Eric Bischoff, and there's a fucking lot I want to say after only 2 episodes of that Who Killed WCW. But one thing I will say is, if Bischoff is open, pick 2 of those 3 hours, there's no way is he picking 9 to 11. Like, one thing that Bischoff, to his credit, understood was beating Raw on the air. Like, being on earlier than them, whether it was to give away results or to do something in the first hour that stops people changing over. That's where, in a ratings war, that's what you need to do. You know what I mean? I would get if they were on a night where there was no other wrestling and this was the direction they wanted to go with the company, I'd get the appeal of 9 to 11. Yeah. But you can't give up that. You can't go fully head to head with the company that's already miles in front of you.
Remember when NXT would start like 4 minutes early when they were running head to head with Dynamite? Yeah. Like, it would just inexplicably come on before the top of the hour. That's, people didn't like it, but that's, smart business. Yeah.
There's been some talk of eventually putting Hart with Hall and Nash as the third outsider, with the idea that Hart was never accepted in WCW. I'm sure Brett took that extremely well.
Brett, you're going to be Kevin Nash's lackey. Yep. I'm sure that went
the third guy.
Remember when we approached you in 1996 to be the third guy and you said no? Well, here's an idea in 1999.
We're going to do it again when everything is substantially less hot, including you. In regard to the babyface heel confusion stemming from Nitro last week, Vince Russo said to various wrestlers something to the effect of that there are no such thing as faces and heels.
Okay, Cody Rhodes.
The feeling among the wrestlers is that what they want out of television matches are high spots with no psychology used, although that hasn't been made totally clear. Although Russo did make it clear holding any hold for more than 15 seconds, he believes, would give the viewer the excuse to hit the clicker. In the WWF, they used to mock the idea of faces and heels, publicly saying they no longer exist. But any examination of the TV shows, in 90% of cases, clearly delineated face and heel characters, even if the faces often wrestle faces or heels wrestle heels. There is some confusion if they actually have no faces and heels playing roles for fans to get emotionally involved with, that it'll be difficult to get crowd reaction, which we're already seeing because, like, we'll talk about this show in a minute, but, like, I am noticing very much that even if people are tuning in to see what the new direction is, that the crowds are fucking dying on their arses lately.
Yeah.
Shane Douglas had surgery to repair his torn bicep this past week. He's talking about being back in the ring in December, but that sounds like it may be rushing things. Douglas has been on the DL more time than not over the last few years, partly because he keeps getting rushed back too fast from virtually every serious injury. They're talking about DDP being away filming, so that's part of why he got written off on Nitro.
What's he filming, Dave?
He's filming Ready to Rumble, I believe.
Yes, he is.
Indeed. Eric Bischoff was in Vegas at the weekend attending the latest Tyson fight with Hulk Hogan. The plan for Ric Flair at this point is to return in 3 to 4 months as some sort of administrator role, perhaps a commissioner title. Oh boy. You can see where this one is going. In fact, you've probably already seen it in a failed angle this year.
I was just going to say, did we just live through this?
Yes. The idea would be for Flair to wrestle 3 or 4 times, limited to major pay-per-view matches in 2000. But if he's back, you know he'll wind up wrestling a whole lot more than that. In fact, after being told all that, he's since been told he's coming back to wrestle more regularly and feud with Kidman and Guerrero. Something a very famous thing we've all heard around this time in wrestling. There are reports everywhere that Jarrett held McMahon up for a 6-figure payoff to drop the title to China at the No Mercy pay-per-view. It's said that Jarrett has confirmed that he got a huge payoff ahead of time before he would go on, but wouldn't confirm how large. The situation with Vampiro at the moment as well. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, do you think Jerry told Dave just how much Jeff got?
You may have. The situation with Vampiro, because remember Vampiro was on TV, off TV, back on TV, and now he hasn't been on TV in a few weeks. The situation most likely is that he will be returning. After having interest early in the week, Paul Heyman didn't return phone calls and never made a legitimate offer to him. God, vamping with a long run in ECW would have been an interesting thing around this time. WCW slightly upped its original offer from $175,000 to $200,000, plus allowing him to do outside merchandise with the ICP, saying that after 6 months at that rate they could bump his salary up more, but also wanting him to make a 3-year contract commitment. The irony is that ICP walked out largely out of loyalty to Vampiro, and now he's back and they're not. Vince Russo said that Lenny Lane and Lodi would return to TV on the 10/25 Nitro. They weren't used, but people are now saying they'll be back next week. Randy Savage was in Las Vegas, but no-showed the Slim Jim's corporate party he was supposed to attend. Was replaced by Ric Flair. I think that's pretty much it from WCW for this week. But quite a lot going on, even if there wasn't a lot interesting going on the TV. Right, shall we get into it, pal?
Let's get into the Thunder.
This is Thunder episode 86 from San Diego, California. The 28th of October, 1999. A 2.3 rating. That is up by 0.4. Wow. That is a big jump for Thunder. Now, I would attribute this to the combination of the new era of the company and it being the first non-taped Thunder, because you remember the last Thunder we did was the Lame Duck had been filmed before the takeover,
before Havoc, I believe.
So we know there's like minor variances. They seem to be down slightly when it's a clearly taped show, so I was expecting it to be up by 0.1 or something like that, but I think again the thing we'll always say about Russo is he'll get people to tune in for the start. So I think maybe, on this one occasion we can say, right, fair enough, like you got people to tune into fucking Thunder. We won't see it breaking above a 2 a lot going forward, so we should enjoy it. Well,
the Vince Russo fans should not get used to us praising Vince Russo getting ratings, because it doesn't happen very much.
No, it's an exception rather than the rule. It's a pretty straight and dry opening to the show, just like opening VT. Tenay with a particularly growly intro to the show, and Juvi's music starts playing straight away, and it's like the show has just started and they're already behind on time, because you can see the referee sprinting out to the ring as Juvi's music hits. Obviously in the fucking jacks when the Thunder VT was playing. I just picture it being like, I can't remember whether it was Mickey J or whoever, but it's just like, it's that footage of Punk looking around for the referee's shirt backstage at Clash in the Castle at the weekend, or it's just like, here's the music, and he's like, oh fuck.
Slick, give me a referee shirt.
Yeah. We get an awkward fast lucha start. Juvi's just trying to do his classic start to a match.
You didn't say who Juvi is facing.
Oh, sorry, Evan Courageous.
Yes, that's Evan Courageous that we saw on Nitro, Dave. He's now a star.
Yes, he is a star, and I'll tell you one thing: a luchador he is not, because he really fucking struggles to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here is where I figured out why Thunder was a little bit of an oasis, and might be for a little while. So we know that when Russo came in, one thing he was saying in his radio interviews and shit like that is that one of the reasons he left WWF is because of burnout, because they added SmackDown and he didn't want to have to write 4 hours of TV. So he went to a company that was currently airing 5 hours of TV.
Yes.
They mention very early in this match that they will have announcements of more World Championship Tournament matches, all of which will be happening next week on Nitro. And I was like, now I see already what Russo thinks of Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's going to be very much a period of time. Now we know, you and I both know, that Thunder gets extremely Russo before long. But I think there's going to be a little honeymoon period here where he is actively trying not to have much to do with Thunder.
Do you think it's 6 weeks? Do you think we got 6 weeks?
I don't know. I can't be sure. What I would be interested to find out would be why he eventually starts, unfortunately, putting some attention on Thunder.
Because he has so many ideas, Dave, that he just can't possibly fit them in 3 hours.
Part of me was like, it's one of two things. It's either he was told, and either he was allowed kind of like put it on the back burner until Nitro loses an hour in the new year, or much more realistically, he's just trying to get away with it until somebody from TBS is like, dude, what the fuck? Like, you have to. We hired you to write 2 shows. Write 2 shows, you cunt.
Do you think he just pawned it off to Ferrara, and Ferrara was just using like Jimmy Hart as an assistant?
I think based on there's a lot of segments on this with interviews that we're going to talk about that are terrible. I'm not saying they'd be better with Russo there, but they're terrible in a way that makes me think people are pulling stuff out of their arses off the top of their heads on this. And I think it's a combination of like Ferrara's given cliff notes and agents are piecing together, the producers are putting the bits in between and just cobbling something together. Here are the cliff notes of what we need done on Thunder, and fucking figure it out.
That probably wasn't quite enough misogyny to be Vince Russo's words.
Yes.
But yeah, no, actually,
Medusa was in no way embarrassed on this show.
Do you know what happened? Is Russo handed it off to Ferrara, and Ferrara handed it off to Bill Banks. And Bill Banks is going, I don't know what the fuck to do, so, you guys figure it out, to the agents.
Yeah. They're just playing past the parcel with the Thunder script.
Yeah. So, that I like that theory. I'm interested to see now how long we can last before Russo starts putting his stamp all, like, don't get me wrong, it's a Russo show, but there's bullshit, but there's not a ton of bullshit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like, there's a lot of rubbish, but it doesn't feel like the same high sugar rubbish. Like, it doesn't have the pace of a show that's written intensely by Vince Russo.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, But anyway, miscommunication on a wheelbarrow suplex spot causes both men to just confusedly take a bump, which was particularly embarrassing. One match in, Tenay and Larry clearly have no interest in talking about anything that happens on Thunder. It's all about Nitro, all about the tournament, all about Brett. Hoovy hits a snug spinning wheel kick to Evan Courageous, caught right in the chops. Courageous blocks a suplex, hits one of his own for a 2 count. Just so we're keeping track, on this show, we're back to calling them the powers that be.
Yes.
So take that. Now, I will say later on this show, somebody else refers to them as those 2 writers from up north again.
Yep.
But Vince Russo and Ad Ferrara are not mentioned by name this time.
No.
On this show.
A nice change.
Yes. Sid comes out 2 minutes into this match because, of course, he is out. He has a microphone. Hoovy looks pissed. And, this is one of those things where, are they now working a shoot because Sid did this?
No, Brett did it last week.
Oh, it was Brett. Yeah, sorry. Brett did it last week, and the guys were legitimately unaware he was doing it. So now are they doing a work based on what happened last week, or are they also not telling these guys? Because Hoovy looked believably pissed when he got out of the ring.
Well, see, I was going to say Hoovy's smart because Hoovy's like, I'm not fucking doing this bullshit. So he gets out of the ring so he doesn't have to bump.
Well, not just he gets out of camera shot.
Yes.
I think is the important thing. He's still there. He's on the apron. But he's not looking like a dickhead standing there looking at Sid on the camera. So the crowd is all over Sid, booing him. Sid is claiming to still be standing here undefeated. And Larry's like, what? He says he's laying out an open challenge for tonight and that he has proof he's undefeated, which gets an incredulous proof from Mike Tenay. Defeat him and he'll cripple you, which was to cue up Benoit coming out, but Benoit comes out way too quick to have heard that while he was still backstage. This show was just timed out horribly. He accepts, and then we have a main event for tonight. Sid shakes hands with Hoovy and Evan and then clotheslines and power bombs the both of them. Interesting note, production-wise for this show, Lee, the commentary table is back at ringside.
Yes, where it remains for the rest of the time in WCW.
Yes. So there's a lot less room for Larry to turn around and take his kudos, but he still does.
He still does.
He still does. The start of the night of horrible promos begins. Because Sid's wasn't quick enough for me to go, this was horrible. But the fucking Maestro. Holy shit.
Dave, did you know...
This was one of the...
I was going to say that the Maestro is the star.
Yeah. This is all the backstage promos on this show were horrible, which is amazing because it's you didn't have to go with this take. So either they just did one take and went with it, or what I fear is the case that all these interviews are the best take that they got.
Yeah,
because doing it multiple times. Because
Stroh even stumbles over his words.
Yeah.
And just keeps going instead of, starting again, doing another take.
Now, I will say the only professional person with a microphone in front of their face for 2 hours was Gene Okerlund.
Yeah.
Gene Okerlund can do this in his sleep, like he really,
a very subdued Gene compared to what we've seen.
Yeah. This is something I don't think, because praising Gene, considering most of the time we see him, it's doing the hotline or just asking the odd couple of questions. We've never had much occasion to praise Gene.
Well, that's because
now that everyone else is starting to really pack it in, you start to think about just like I said, he could do a 7, 8 out of 10 wrestling TV announcer job in his fucking sleep.
But also, we've spent the last year and a half with Horny Gene, where he just surrounds himself with the Nitro girls or college girls or...
And don't get me wrong, he's still Horny Gene, but he's doing his job as well.
Or trying to get himself over where, he's shouting at wrestlers or whatever. But yeah, no, this, throughout the show, he's, fairly professional and subdued. But
Maestro is not.
The Maestro, my God. It just stuck with me. The star. He's the star of the show.
Yeah, he... the thing that I think tees it up to be a failure as well as Gene started by going is like, we've all been captivated by your flamboyant entrances and in-ring style. It's like, one, his entrances haven't been that flamboyant, and two, he has been, I think he's wrestled twice on our podcast. I don't know if he's been on any of the Nitros we haven't seen, but he's wrestled at least twice on TV, and the crowds have been fucking dead.
Yes.
Every time he has. Like, so he calls himself an entertainer, which again, high irony. Now I do like one line he has where he calls every other wrestler in the company a polyester clad simpleton, which is
very Damien
funny.
Sandow.
Yeah. And all I wrote for it was, how was this the take they went with? Like, he stumbles over almost every line in that promo, except for polyester-clad simpletons, which in terms of vocabulary was probably the hardest thing to physically say. And yeah, he says he's the star, and does like a very, his conductory hand gesture when he's doing it. Like, he's so uncomfortable with this. And again, the one thing you'll say about Russo is that if Russo is hands-on, he works with these guys to do, like, we've seen the footage from Beyond the Mat, like, he works with guys on their promos, like, to kind of, like, practice and go over and explain, like, even if the actual text of what they're saying that he's written is dog shit, he gets a lot of people to say it with conviction. And no one, like, again, this feels like, whether it was Ed Ferrara or it was somebody else, it feels like somebody just gave a bunch of people who weren't confident speaking no help and just gave them like 2 bullet points. It's like, you need to hit this and this. Figure it out. You got a minute. Yeah, it comes off as like really low rent. Like all these interviews on this show, like, it makes it just not feel like a polished mainstream product.
But I mean, it's not a polished product. It's
no, but you should at least have pretenses to looking that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, that should be your aim, is that even if your guys aren't confident and stuff like that, that you're kind of faking it till you make it.
Well, I mean, there's enough people on the roster that are comfortable speaking that they shouldn't have to have the Maestro and Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko cut promos.
Yeah. Or if you're going to have these shaky promos, at least don't at the same time have storylines in your company about the company sucking.
Yes.
Because if you're constantly beating people over the head with how much the company sucks now, and then you give them Maestro promos, the fans are like, oh, it does suck now. You know, it's really not helping.
Do you know what didn't suck, and I thought was a highlight of the show?
What?
Is Chavo screaming for Goldberg backstage.
Yes. Now, I will say, this is kind of stealing the Jericho bit.
Yes, it is.
But it's the most entertained I've been by Chavo. And I think it's the best of all the insider stuff they've done so far. I think this is the one that's the best, because it isn't expose the business insider.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't break kayfabe. But explain what Chavo is doing for the night here.
So Chavo, we cut from the Maestro to Chavo in the back screaming for Goldberg as he's walking around the backstage area. And very randomly, just in the middle of a backstage area, not even near the entrance, just some random backstage area, Mike Graham is sitting at the table.
They set up a fake gorilla with Mike Graham at it.
Like in the parking lot, basically. Now, to be fair, I would keep Mike Graham as far away from my product as possible too. So, you know, if he wants to sit at a table backstage and think he's important, that's fine.
And if you want to hear us talk about Mike Graham's body hair distribution, there's a great show up on the Patreon at the moment.
But yeah, Chavo meets Mike Graham backstage, and, you know, Graham asks him what he's doing. And Chavo's like, you know, I'm looking for Goldberg. He said, it's a great way to get TV time. And kind of just... Graham shakes his head and Chavo just continues on screaming for Goldberg.
Yeah. The one bit that I thought came close to the line of being eye-rolly for me is that he does literally use the phrase "getting myself over."
Yes. Well, he does that like on a...
He does it the next time, yeah.
Is it not later on when he's on the phone?
Yeah, it is, yeah. This time it's, I'm just trying to get some TV time, brother.
Yeah.
Which is funny. Singles match. The Maestro versus Prince Ikea, the flat pack sovereign, immediately just wrote, fuck's sake.
IKEA's got some sweet new gear. Did you notice?
Yeah. He seems to have, like, this is one thing I'll say about him. For a guy who is just boring as all fucking hell, this guy, every couple of months when he seems to keep falling for it that they're going to do something with him this time, he goes out and he buys nice gear.
Well, I mean, that to me would just show that he's getting paid far too much, that he's buying all this
Oh,
gear.
no. Look, Lee, it's WCW. They're all getting paid far too much. People who aren't on TV are getting paid far too much. So, yeah. This is one thing I want to say as well that is very... One of the things about Russo, and like we read in The Observer, the idea that they're not focusing on in-ring psychology and telling stories with matches. One of the things about Vince Russo is he has no confidence in himself to progress a story through wrestling. So a recurring theme is going to be commentators having to work extra time to put over what Vince Russo is trying to get across and doesn't think he has. And often it's because he hasn't gotten across very well. So early in this match, they spend a good 30 seconds beating it into your head that Bret Hart had no idea that the Outsiders came out and killed Goldberg.
Yes.
Which is very funny because they do it so much that you're just like, well, he clearly had an idea. And also it's making, even if that's not the way you're going, you're making Bret look like an idiot. Because, so then what I am to believe in kayfabe, right? If I think this is all real, I am to believe that Bret was hurt with his ankle outside the ring, turned around, and Goldberg had just died in the ring.
Yes.
Just unprompted, just went vertical to horizontal. And Bret just looked and went, well, it must have been me.
Results.
I don't remember, but it must have been me. I don't see anyone else here.
And
there definitely isn't two huge fucking goofs up on the ramp.
And here's the other thing. After I watched the most recent Nitro, it actually auto-played onto the next Nitro.
Yeah.
And the very first shot of this show is Bret Hart confronting the Outsiders backstage, saying, I don't need your help.
Yeah. Which is funny because then that strains credibility even more, because that implies that Bret watched the show last week, and Bret was not watching these shows. I will say, it's been pointed out on Twitter this week, and we're not going to get into... We've talked in the Discord a little bit about... We've been asked, will we review Who Killed WCW? And we don't really have any intention of doing it.
No.
Because I think our instincts were right that there's no real huge revelation so far on the thing. And it's talking about stuff we will get to.
Yes.
Or we already have gotten to. There's no point in retreading ground or spoiling stuff that will come up on the podcast eventually. What I will say, though, is the one shining light is that the show is 80% old men lying about their involvement in killing this company, and 20% them cutting to Bret Hart going, all these people are fucking morons. And it's great. Bret is everything you want on this, because one, he has contempt for WCW and everything about it, and two, he is the pettiest bitch on earth, and I have never seen a burial of Bill Goldberg like there was on the second episode. I don't think you've seen the second episode yet.
I haven't watched any of them. I haven't watched any.
He contrives about 8 different ways to say Bill Goldberg is an idiot. It's like... And they edit it in such a way that poor Bill doesn't come off great, because like he berates him as an idiot around the Starrcade match, which we will eventually get to on the timeline, so I won't talk about it too much. But he just fucking berates Goldberg left, right, and center. And then they cut in a clip of Goldberg just going, I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm just like, oh, you fucking killed Goldberg, guys. Oh my God.
Are you trying to tell me Dwayne doesn't like Goldberg?
I know. There's like a little clip where they're trying to justify themselves how they've done it, and they have a little clip of Goldberg going, I never ever intended to hurt anybody, but I was on TV and pushed higher than I should have been before I was ready. But you weren't going to say, like, if you're in my position, you were hardly going to say, no, I'm not ready. You were just going to try to do your best. But that I never intended to hurt anybody, and I still feel bad about hurting Brett to this day, but what the fuck am I going to do? Like, because this petty bitch won't stop giving out about me. So they have that one clip, but then the rest of it is just Brett going, this guy, like, he's all but going, I don't know how he's able to tie his own shoelaces. Like, that's how derogatory he is towards Goldberg's intelligence on this show.
It sounds CM Punk about Ryback-esque in the way you're describing.
Do you know what? It's not a million miles off that. Yeah. Short of getting Goldberg to say, I'm a big stupid idiot. Yeah. Anyway,
Speaking
so
of
IKEA sells for a bit.
I was just going to say, speaking of big stupid idiots.
Yeah, here's two of them in this match. IKEA sells for a bit and then puts the boots to Maestro, who begs off but then pulls him into a turnbuckle for the heat. Holy shit, this crowd is quiet. IKEA with chops and does hit a nice drop kick. We've said it before. IKEA does hit a nice drop kick. Maestro wins with a move he calls the Encore, which is just an STF. I do love Mike Tenay saying, you know, when somebody does this, they go, it's his version of the STF.
Yes.
It's just an STF. There is nothing different about it. It is just an STF.
Yeah.
It's perfectly well executed STF. Fine. And then Prince taps out. And, like, I didn't know if Prince IKEA was a babyface or a heel, but Maestro is definitely a heel because they have the classic after the bell, he puts it back on. And Tenay has to do a thing about, like, trying to excuse why he broke the hold without being forced. And he's like, referee Slick Johnson must have threatened a DQ. And I'm like, well, the match is already over. Anyway, so Maestro wins here. Revolution comes walking out. Shane Douglas has a sling and a Hawaiian shirt on, which is an upgrade from he was just wearing the cast on Monday. We get a recap of the abduction storyline from Monday, and 3 days later, Asia still has Tori hostage somewhere, and there is absolutely no development on that storyline. Everybody's just still mad about it on this show.
Yeah, because we're all just going to wait till Monday. It's fine.
In a thing that made me think we were watching episodes out of sequence, Dean announces he's wrestling Benoit next week in the tournament, and there will be no man left standing. And I was like, hold on. Didn't they just have a last man standing match on this Nitro just gone? And they did.
Yes, they did. And now they're and see, this is the thing that annoys me about this tournament. Well, first of all, classic Russo. There's no
batshit tournaments.
There's no brackets.
There's no bracket. The brackets are announced like at random intervals. What's funny is like they say there's going to be an announcement because they did a thing where they showed one side of the bracket on Monday as the matches started happening. And Tenay was alluding to the fact that the second side of the bracket would be announced tonight. But what actually happened was just a bunch of men declared themselves
in
wrestling
matches.
Wrestler X. Yes.
But yeah, so
horseshit.
It's like we briefly saw a bracket of the matches that took place in Nitro. Then there was no other side of the bracket, so we didn't know who was going to be in it. And now they're just doing the classic Russo thing of, well, these two guys are in a feud, so they're facing each other in the tournament.
Yeah.
Just perfectly, like, it just happens to be that we're going to allow Chris Benoit against Dean Malenko in the tournament.
Not even. You can't even do one round before these guys face each other, like, which would be a much better story. No.
That would be
Can't
wrestling,
have
Dave.
that.
You can't have that.
That would require him to think for more than 5 seconds about a wrestling match. This leads into a tag team match. It's Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn with Shane Douglas versus El Dandy and Silver King, our mate. The Lucha lads fucking sprint out to the ring. We're clearly running behind. Like, Revolution throw them straight out of the ring while Shane Douglas gets on commentary. Shane Douglas knows how little emphasis Vince Russo puts on wrestling because he doesn't even bother sitting down. He just stays standing as he's on commentary here. Not much to say about this match, which is a theme of the night. Silver King hits a lovely swinging DDT at one point. And then does a very pelvic dance. This the Lucha lads get a super kick party going in the middle of this, and I was like, that's very funny to me.
I thought Saturn and Malenko had a couple of decent combination moves. There was like a suplex crossbody and like a decapitation, like a knee drop into a backbreaker. So you can see that these are just two good wrestlers who just are trying to, for whatever reason, trying to actually take seriously being a tag team.
They'd probably love to have 15 minutes with these two guys.
Like these four could have fucking tore her up.
Yeah. Dean Malenko grossly coughs up an entire lung on Silver King. The action is good, as you said. I think it has really good pacing.
Yes.
And it's maybe the most engaged the crowd are for long periods on this show. King hits a triangle splash to the outside, which is cool. The finish comes as Dandy misses a baseball slide immediately after that. Shane throws a chain to Malenko, who turns around and KOs Dandy with it, rolls him in, cloverleaf, and a tap out. I thought the finish, whereas like I wouldn't have gone for, like I didn't think Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn needed a chain assist to beat El Dandy. I would have just had a clean finish in this, but whatever.
It's heels cheating for the sake of heels cheating.
Yes, it's shortcut because you can't tell a story. But I will say, given that was the finish they decided to do, I thought it came off very smooth. Because triangle moonsault, camera cuts very well perfectly to the baseball slide being missed. One smooth motion for the throw over the chain and the catch, the turn on his heel, punches El Dandy, throws it back to Shane Douglas, catches it in one go without wasting time, rolls El Dandy in, puts him in the cloverleaf and taps him out. Very smoothly done, even if that wouldn't be the finish I would pick for the match. So, like, again, fair play to these guys for maximizing their minutes and making something a little bit interesting and a little bit cohesive and coherent out of it. We go back to the star of the show, Chavo Guerrero, backstage. At this stage, he's calling Goldberg things like a little girly boy. I do love, the thing that Mike Graham had said of being like, there's a little moment over. He's like, he's not here tonight. Yeah, and Chavo being like, yeah. Like, as if to go, yeah, are you nuts? I would not be calling him out if he was anywhere near this city. Now, we're not watching Nitro next week, but, like, Vince Russo is an utter coward if it doesn't, like...
Pay off with...
If we don't have...
Goldberg
coming out and destroy him. Yeah. It has to have he thinks he's still not there on Monday and Goldberg, like, surprises him. This would be the one time where I think... he's behind me, isn't he? Would be very funny payoff, like where he's doing it and Goldberg has come in and he's got like his gear bag behind and he's just standing behind him, and like Chavo does the thing where like he reaches behind and feels Goldberg's face, like that proper fucking Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Like
the big exasperated gasp. He's like, shit.
And then just all Goldberg has to say is "you're next," and then they have like a 90-second squash that night. Like that's what you do, And it's such a shame Goldberg couldn't get out of his own way, because the payoff against Jericho would have been that level of funny.
Yeah, it would have been great
if he just hadn't gotten too sensitive about it, because like. We didn't talk about it as much at the time that angle fell apart because Goldberg felt he was being made fun of and he was getting very paranoid about his spot because of the way WCW was at the time. But Jesus Christ, like I have never for 1 second, like I watched that whole angle play out as we recorded it. I've seen all the segments from it before and never once have I thought Goldberg was made to look like an idiot and all wasn't. That. It was that Jericho's a clown, and I would actually pay cash money for Goldberg to kill him.
When Kevin Nash is in somebody's ear saying they're treating you like an idiot here, bro.
Yeah.
That's what people hear.
We get an ad next. Oh, so here's something we should announce, because we've had a couple of listeners over the last couple of months have offered to help us out with getting us the Thunder archives.
Oh, yes.
Because the network is going out of business. In Europe, presumably next year when the Netflix deal hits. I am pleased to say that we have been sorted. We are saved. We have everything we should need for the rest of the run of the podcast secured permanently on physical hard drives now. So thank you very much to a couple of listeners. I know Kieran, shout out to Kieran from Must See Matches, who was offering possible alternatives for us, and a couple of other people who were trying to help us out. We have now finally gotten sorted, as we were getting just a bit antsy about it, and we have now, as of this show, officially made the switch. We are no longer, thank God, putting any of the Patreon money into keeping our network subscription. Titan Sports will no longer get our money. Now we are going off original TV broadcast, which is cool because we get things like our first sight of a hotline ad for the Nitro Road Report. So we're going to see real dumb shit like this coming up. I can't wait to see some WCW commercials from the day. But this was good, where it's like, what's his name that does the Road Report? I can't think of the dude's name. But it's basically like someone sitting at a pool and he's like, oh God, I better tune in for the WCW Road Report to see what happened at the weekend. It's really
like,
cringe.
I've no cell phone at the pool, and he has to make a collect. Was a 1-800 ATT collect or whatever. Whatever.
It's very funny.
Well, it's funny,
we get a full recap from Nitro of everything that's happened in the tournament so far, which is very funny because you would do that if you were then going to lead into, okay, here's now the tournament matches that are on Thunder tonight, but there are none. So a really solid recap. I'll let you know what's going on.
The most comprehensive Nitro recap I think we've ever seen.
Yeah. We get Harlem Heat backstage. This was also quite poor. Stevie says that Curly Bill is like, they said you're gonna be wrestling Curly Bill tonight, and incredulously at first he's like, Curly Bill, and he's just like, whatever his name is now, he's a punk ass sellout, which is funny because this guy was his partner like about 3 months ago.
Well, no, they weren't partners.
Tonight,
they were fighting for control of the NWO Hollywood, Dave.
Oh, this is true. Yes. Tonight is about sending a message to the Filthy Animals, and then they are cut off by Chavo screaming off camera about Goldberg.
Now, one point is, I don't know whether it was a TBS thing or it was just a copy of Thunder we have, but Fruit Booty got bleeped.
Yes, it's because it's the TV taping, because it's got we have now the Superstation logo is up in the corner, which it wasn't before.
Yes.
So this is, Fruit Booty mustn't have been suitable on the Superstation at this point in '99. It will be interesting to see, because Stevie Ray is not shy of saying Fruit Booty for the entire rest of the run of Thunder, so it's interesting to see whether that continues to get bleeped out or they soften a little bit.
I tell you what, New Day missed a beat not having Fruit Bootios.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's the crossover, really. That's what the 10-man team would be called if they had ever done Harlem Heat reunion with the New Day. Anyway, we get the Revolution leaving the building and getting into what I thought was their car, but later on is kind of alluded to be the Filthy Animals car.
Was it?
Because there was something about, like, I can't remember. Did they mess with the Filthy Animals car on Monday? Because if not, then this was the Filthy Animals car.
No, there was a pursuit of some kind on Monday.
Yeah, the Filthy Animals could have, when they cut their promo later, mention about the Revolution messing with their car.
No, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention then.
So that was not made very clear. We get a Sting MasterCard commercial, which was excellent as well. And then we get Gene with Curly Bill, and this is fucking, I mean, look, even on his best day, Curly Bill was not cutting a great promo. This was really bad.
He forgets Kurt Hennig's name.
Calls him Kirk.
Yeah.
Kirk Hennig.
He went blank for a minute. He went Kirk Hennig.
He talks about how the Rednecks are on shaky ground because Gene is teasing dissension between them. He says he's going to brand Stevie tonight like his moose, which Gene is like, moose? Don't you mean cattle? Kirk Hennig left them high and dry, and he doesn't really care that, like, because Gene says, like, he reminds him that Kirk is currently going through a storyline where, like, the next time he loses, he's retiring. And he's like, yeah, don't care so much about that. This was bad. And speaking of bad, Curly Bill versus Stevie Ray. Now, thankfully, this is just a lot of Curly Bill on the ground and Stevie Ray punch kicking him. So there wasn't too much to fuck up, but it was bad. And I will say, Booker on commentary trying to cut a little bit loose. Black Snow Origins?
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
For our TNA fans?
Yeah.
There was no Chet Lemon in sight.
I did enjoy when Curly Bill got thrown over the announce table. Well, first of all, he took out Tanay, which was very funny.
Yeah, you just hear Booker T be like, "Today, you all right?"
but
and Larry being like, "Yeah, he's fine."
But also, as Booker is just sitting there, like, didn't budge an inch, and he just
no, he wasn't actually that concerned,
and he just slapping Curly Bill, just going, "Come on, get up."
The weird thing is he keeps calling Stevie Ray Big Steve as well, which is really strange. I don't know why it tickled me as much as it did, but Big Steve Ray is great.
That's when he remember when Andy Cole became Andrew Cole?
Yeah.
So that's
he's rebranding as Big
Steve Ray.
Do you reckon this is where they were eventually planning to go with Big Steve and Big T? Was the pipe dream that they had at the time, and they're trying to lay the groundwork? Anyway, there's a ref bump.
Of course there was.
Yeah, Curly Bill nails Steve. I love when somebody takes off the shoe that they're allowed to wear in the match, and all of a sudden it becomes more devastating being used as like just throwing it, rather than like, could he not have just kicked him in the face while wearing the boot?
Yeah.
At least the cat started doing the thing where he was putting on the illegal footwear he hadn't been wearing.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, I don't know about you, but I generate a lot more power with my legs than I do my arms.
Yeah. This is the thing as well, is that, like, Harlem Heat are another team that are in that kind of tweener position at the moment. Mm-hmm. Because, yes, Curly Bill is a heel and he attacked with the boot, but then Booker T comes in, hits a Harlem sidekick to help his brother get the win with the slapjack.
He helps
so
Big Steve.
Okay. Yeah, it is. Sorry, Big Steve. Yeah, so Big Steve picks up the win here. And then we see the Filthy Animals arriving. They come straight out and cut an incredibly awkward promo. I have never seen Conan and Eddie look less comfortable on a microphone, but they did. And then Kidman, just for good measure, uses the word marks in describing the revolution, which, yeah, woo. This leads into a very uneventful 6-man tag match of the Brits versus the Filthy Animals.
Is it just me, or did Chris Adams nearly get lost on the entrance?
Yes, he did.
Just
I
wandered
didn't
off
even realize he was there for a couple of seconds.
He just wandered off to the left for some reason.
Yeah. I also I really don't like the Steve Regal one shoulder singlet.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right at all.
Also, this area of Regal is not good.
No. Also, speaking of not good, boy, did they leave poor Ray out to die by putting him on commentary during this match. He's so uncomfortable, so deeply uncomfortable. God bless him. Clearly pushing through injury, saying he's going to be back in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And as we know, because we looked ahead on the podcast a few weeks ago, he comes back, wrestles 2 matches, and then is out for 6 months.
Yep.
This man needed to be told, go sit on a beach for 3 months and come back healthy, please. But unfortunately, that was not the kind of company that would do that.
Do you think if he had got his time off, he actually would have made the relationship with Jennifer Aniston work?
I mean, one can only hope, because we would have been spared the indignity of Dominic Mysterio existing.
I don't know. Dominic Aniston could have been a big star.
I think if Ray had had a child with Jennifer Aniston, he would have substantially more charisma.
Are you trying to say,
or at least
Angie has no charisma,
or at least better hair? You know, like Jennifer Aniston, famous for her era-defining haircuts.
That's true.
Wasn't that the whole thing in the 90s? Was that
the Rachel
several
haircut,
phases? Jennifer, She was the one that like people were bringing pictures of her to the hair salon.
Yeah, the
going,
Rachel.
Yeah,
you're probably not old enough to remember that. But...
I was older. Like I watched most of Friends' first run.
Okay.
When it was.
I like the way I say you're not old enough. I'm like 3 years older than you.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say the first series I have distinct memories of watching every new episode as it came out was the series leading up to the wedding in London.
Okay.
Because I remember the London episode was a huge television event over here.
Yes, it was.
In a way that it almost certainly wasn't in America.
Well, it was for Dave Meltzer.
Yeah, of course it was. But like it was probably just a typical season finale over in the States, whereas here it was like, holy shit.
They're in London, holy shit, yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember that was the Phoebe is pregnant series. That's all I remember.
Yes, that's the Phoebe is pregnant series, the Emily series. The Chandler and Monica get together in that episode. Yeah. It's a big time for Dave. You have to say.
All us Matt LeBlanc fans here in the UK and Ireland.
Huge over here. Like Hasselhoff in Germany. What do we got here? Yeah, this match is not great. Rolling clothesline from Conan takes out Adams. There's a moment where it threatens to break out into a little bit of a physical thing where Regal comes in and hits some really aggressive kicks on Kidman. The one thing I will say is tremendous is for about 20 seconds we get a vintage Eddie Guerrero hot tag spot. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty solid. Match breaks down outside. Ray gets involved. Again, this kind of fucking tweener shit where like Ray is getting involved in beating down the Brits. And like they're supposed to be baby faces, but they essentially like outnumber these guys and then rob them.
We keep saying this. They keep robbing people after they beat them.
Yeah. Now this was funny because they robbed their robes when they beat them, and they put them on. And putting on the robes was funny.
Yes.
Although I couldn't figure out why, because of the way it was kind of the cameras were cutting. But Conan looked legitimately pissed when this match was over for some reason.
No, because I try not to look at Conan as much as I don't have to.
So when the bell rang, he's having a little hissy fit walking back towards the ramp, and I can't figure out why exactly. But yeah, just worth noting, I guess. This is the spot then with Chavo on the phone backstage talking about getting himself over. I've been on TV at least 3 times tonight already, brother. Berlyn backstage. Holy fuck, this was bad.
So Berlyn, that famously does not speak English, all of a sudden decides to speak English. Yeah. So they killed that gimmick dead.
Well, the two things that were going for him for a month was that he was undefeated and didn't speak English, and then they beat him and made him speak English.
I mean, there was a point in his match that comes up later on where I expected him to do the dance.
Yeah. Fuck, this was bad. Also, it's really funny because he's been in America for so long that now he kind of sounds like somebody putting on a slightly insensitive German accent. Yes. Because it is mostly American twang off him now at this stage, which is really interesting. But this promo is horribly bad. Like, trying to put together why he is speaking English, where he's like, I am using your corrupt system against you. Do you not see? And he talks about, again, in this, like, they're coming up real close to saying some very dodgy things and implying some things about Berlyn, where they say his master plan is now in effect. Yes. I'm just like, fuck's sake, guys. Like, fucking hell.
He strikes me as a cross between Hans Gruber and the other guy.
Yeah, the other guy. Oh, God. Back-to-back terrible promos. God bless Lash LaRue. He comes out.
Might be the worst in the show, honestly. Like,
it was awful. Like, he is not comfortable at all. At all. I keep using not comfortable as the phrase on this show, but it was a succession of people who were deeply uncomfortable with a microphone in front of their face, and he might, as you say, be the worst
and
one.
Lash was in front of the crowd, which made it worse.
Yeah. And, like, he's getting drowned out by people just, like, booing him. And again, he's another guy who, like, is he a face? Is he a heel? But the last couple of weeks he's been doing things like laying people out after the bell and stuff like that.
Yeah, but he hasn't mugged anyone.
Yeah. Chavo calls out Goldberg again. Lash had said, by the way, that he's wrestling the cat in the tournament. I can't remember if I said that. This leads to Lash LaRue versus Chavo Guerrero. Lash jumps Chavo from behind at the bell, but as you say, he's supposed to be a babyface, I guess. Tenay announces out of nowhere that Sid will be in the tournament, wrestling his new ally from Monday, Scott Hall.
Really driving home that these guys are allies.
Yeah. Larry. Oh yeah, but I love Larry so sarcastically just going, "That's interesting." Doesn't give a fuck. But you know what? Neither do I, Larry. Wrestling in the ring, couple of quick pinning attempts. Chavo mostly in control. Tenay, I love this. Tenay says, "I have the exclusive scoop on DDP's injury," at which point Larry just cuts across him and starts like joking about, "Oh, he's probably injured his ribs again." And in fact, that is the kayfabe injury. So he completely undercut how serious this. Like, they did a full stretcher job to write him off for a while. And Tenay goes, "Well, actually, yes, he's out for an indefinite period of time with broken ribs and a cracked sternum."
Well done, Larry.
Yeah. Larry is sarcastic and sexist when he mentions Kimberly, and this match is very dull. Chavo whips him into a corner twice, and you want to talk about like not bothering to think of interesting things to do in a match. Lash's entire babyface comeback is picking up Chavo and nearly dropping him awkwardly on a flapjack, and then immediately doing the whiplash and pinning him.
He had one move. He really did just have the one move.
Yeah.
It's a good move. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. It just they are not putting together matches to hide how green he is or to help him develop either.
Nope.
You know, what is the purpose of how they're booking him right now? I do not understand. They're not giving him reps because these matches aren't long.
No.
And he's not doing much apart from selling and then doing 2 moves. Like, I got nothing. The animals, fuck me. I think, by a distance, the character I hate the most in World Championship Wrestling right now is Buff Bagwell.
Yes. And it's not even close.
The Filthy Animals do their GTV bit with Kidman and his camcorder. And, like, I cannot fathom why you would do this. Why this would be written into a script. What possible advantage this could have to make people want to watch WCW. But they record Buff Bagwell and Scotty Riggs going over their match.
Mm-hmm.
Like talking about spots and a 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Like, I know Lee that this is Russo. This is what he does. Like, he exposes the business. But like, sometimes with some of the insidery stuff, like, say, I know it wasn't a Russo thing, it was before Russo, but say the finger poke of doom, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a horrible, business-alteringly bad decision, right? But you could make a straw man argument about, like Nash does on Who Killed WCW, where he's like, it got people talking and it got heat on the NWO, and even in kayfabe, you could make a justification for why they did that. There is no getting around that this was a segment where the only purpose of it was to go, you stupid fans, wrestling is fake.
This shit is fake, and why are you watching it? That's what it was.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I don't think there is a writer or a booker in the history of professional wrestling that has such open contempt for the medium that made him successful.
Well, Vince McMahon.
Because we all... Well, this is the thing. We all joke about Vince McMahon and stuff like that, but I don't think... Like, much as Vince McMahon always wanted to be remembered for something other than being the wrestling guy, and do you know what, Vince? You got there in the end. No. You're not just going to be remembered for being the wrestling guy anymore. But I don't think he was a guy... He was a guy who would shy away from saying he was just a wrestling guy. But I don't... He never in this way showed contempt for that. Like, he would never tank Raw just because he hates wrestling. Do you know what I mean? Like, he would, yeah, it's hard to explain. It is different. It's hard to, like, put words to why it's different. They do both have a contempt for wrestling in a lot of ways, but, like, Vince Russo is just in this different kind of, like, idiotic, self-destructive, actively trying to make him and everyone around him less money because he doesn't like wrestling. That's the thing. Maybe that's the difference, is that Vince had contempt for wrestling but would never make decisions that very clearly would make him less money.
Not knowingly, whereas I think Russo would.
Not knowingly. Yeah. Just out of spite or just out of fucking, arrogance or whatever you want to say. But anyway, a white limo appears. Out come multiple very confused looking women, followed by the cat, who now the cat has grown a little bit of hair. He's dyed it out. He's got his new kind of his new getup. He is looking more like the cat everybody remembers from this period of time now. Still a heel at this point. We're still several months away from babyface Commish, the cat, but looking a bit more recognizable to people from kind of our age group. We get a singles match, which is Berlyn versus Jerry Flynn. I just thought of Norm Macdonald. All the stars are here. Now, I will say,
it's a Thunder match. So, it's a Thunder show. So we got to get our Thunder regulars. We've got Lash, we've got Chavo, and here's Jerry.
Yeah. Now, I do think these guys did try to have a wrestling match, but Jerry in particular is not very good.
No, he's not.
And try as they might, it was not going to be a good match. But I can't fault them for effort. They were trying to do spots and get the crowd going. One thing I will say, this was a bad matchup of people, because Alex Wright is so lanky that it completely undercuts the one thing Jerry Flynn has, which is his size.
Yes.
Like, he just looks like a normal height man, because, like, Berlyn doesn't look like his body type doesn't make him look tall. So if he's in the ring with other tall people, it makes the tall person look shorter.
It's the deceptively large thing, like people never said for a long time that I don't say Billy Gunn because he's just an enormous fucking man anyway. But there's always been people in the business that say, oh, well, you don't realize how big he is. Like Dustin Rhodes, there you go. For a long time, people never talked about him as a big guy.
Yeah.
Until everybody else started getting smaller around him, and then people are like, "Oh my god, the size of this Dustin Rhodes guy."
Yeah. Larry has completely checked out on the show. Couldn't care less. He spends what feels like about 5 minutes talking about red shoes, because Jerry Flynn's got some red shoes, and he remembered like some random synapse in his brain fired, and he remembered the cat was doing the bit with the red shoe for a while. So he was talking about, like, are people getting a discount? Is it the fashion at the moment? Jimmy tries to choke Berlyn with something, but the bodyguard appears and takes him out, still not identified by name. Then he gets back on the apron, has his loaded fist, punches Jerry Flynn in the head, and Berlyn covers him for the win. So we're just pretending that he didn't just lose against Brad Armstrong World Police. We're just going to keep on going. Fair enough. Sid, of all people, gets pissed at Chavo for calling out Goldberg, which I thought was really funny, because that was like his running bit for 2 solid months, was just calling out Goldberg at every show. And he grabs Chavo around the neck and just fucks him over a box. Pretty funny. The cat and his ladies come out. Terrible promo. It's the every cat promo we've ever seen. So he has improved his look, but he hasn't improved his gimmick at all. Sasses all the rednecks in the crowd. Says he's going to win the tournament. I do always get a little bit of a wry smile when he threatens to whoop everyone inside the building. Like he's going to physically fight an entire crowd.
Whoop every chump in this crowd. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that will get me a little bit. Gene backstage with Benoit, as you would expect, a very bad promo, because Benoit was never a promo guy. The highlight of this was him referring to Sid as disillusional about his streak. Fair enough. Next up, we've got the semi-main event. I'm sure you're excited about this. Buff Bagwell Scotty Riggs.
He's subdued Buff again.
We praised the recap of the tournament, and I've got to bury this one because I got so mad that they condensed all the horrible insider Buff promos and angles into one video package to make me extra annoyed going into this match. And then I'll just read exactly what happened.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll throw to you, right? I just wrote, Jesus Christ, this match. Fuck all happens for about 2 minutes. Buff then kicks out of a crossbody, which surprises the ref and Riggs. Mickey J puts his hand to his earpiece, hears something through it, talks to Buff, who immediately rolls up Riggs, and Mickey reluctantly counts the 3.
Yep, that's exactly what happens.
So we are now doing a thing where we are saying on TV that finishes are predetermined.
Yeah.
And Buff is refusing to do predetermined finishes, so we're letting him win.
This is the second time that Buff has refused to cooperate with the planned finish. And now Buff Bagwell has the unbreakable schoolboy.
Yeah, and bear in mind as well, one of the things that was in the package was the promo we talked about in Nitro, where he said he's not doing jobs anymore.
Yes. Storytelling.
One of the all-time worst angles. Like, it doesn't get talked about enough, this. No. Like, I feel like in all the insidery stuff Russo does and will continue to do during this, I feel like the Buff stuff...
The initial Buff stuff
doesn't come up. Yeah. Doesn't come up enough. This is the canary in the coal mine dying. And people should know that the show is going to resemble this angle much more than it's going to be representative of anything else that's going on the show. It's going to be... This is just going to seep out like a fucking cancer across everything that's going on in WCW before long. It fucking sucked. Okay, main event time. Let's go to you for this, pal, because it's Sid.
Is that your
Sid
reasoning?
Vicious versus Chris Benoit. Yeah, basically, you're the Sid correspondent.
I feel like this is the second or third Sid versus Benoit match we've had on Thunder recently.
Yeah, we've definitely had at least one other.
And I mean,
because he was like Sid's warm-up TV feud on the way to Goldberg.
And I think, like I talked about before, Sid always seems to give Benoit a lot. And I think it was no different here. I think they kind of work well together. And the finish was dog shit. Benoit misses the headbutt. I can't remember what happens. I think Sid goes for the powerbomb or his chokeslam or something. And Benoit gets the crossface on.
Yeah, it happens so quick that I'm not even sure Sid gets back up.
Or maybe he didn't get back up.
It happens almost straight away, that Benoit is actually able to recover quicker than Sid is.
But he definitely misses like a long distance headbutt, and then he gets the crossface on, and the Revolution just interfere.
Yeah,
and then Sid gets pissed and takes out Malenko and Saturn, and then Benoit. Yeah.
And then the Filthy Animals come out.
Yeah, and then we get the Filthy Animals come out to brawl with Revolution in the oil, and that's the end of the show.
And we're out of time. Yeah. Just cut to black.
It was a decent 3-minute match, and then it just went to shit.
Yeah. How many times are we going to say that? Going forward. That is the end of episode 86 of Thunder. So I guess with that, Lee, give us your overall thoughts on the show and your winners and losers. After
talking through the show, I realised there wasn't as much on the show that I actually liked as I thought. But it was a breezy watch. And I think that makes a difference in how you perceive things. Like, while there wasn't anything particularly good, like we just said, the promos were fucking dog shit all night. And there was no really good wrestling to talk about, other than the couple of minutes we got of Benoit Sid. I just felt like, compared to the absolute death that was the Kevin Nash era of Thunders. Like, this is kind of refreshing. We got like a really good recap of Nitro.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm going to compare it to, Lee? Is current day WWE.
Okay.
Because current day WWE is a completely obnoxious presentation of a style of wrestling that hasn't changed that much, but has changed slightly, and because it's better than the regime that preceded it, people are rushing to laud it. So we have people saying, like you said, we talked about the Observer earlier on, where half of the fans are like, yeah, this is good, I'm into this, because it's new and it's different. And I think there's a lot of that happening with, like, again, we saw over the weekend people praising the booking on the fucking Clash at the Castle show, and as soon as I read the actual things that were booked in that show, I'm just like, this is still bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, like, I don't get, like, the Triple H era of pay-per-views are horrible, and, like, very seldom, with the exception of Cody finishing his story this year, don't really have payoffs that are satisfactory. And just because a slight modicum of logic has been added hither and thither, people are gushing over what that show is now. And I feel like because it's marginally more watchable than it was, people are rushing to throw flowers. And I feel that's kind of what's happening in this honeymoon period with Russo and Ferrara. I'm not saying it's as bad. Like, I'm not, like, I'm just saying in terms of the people are now overreacting to the change of regime is the similarity I want to draw, rather than saying that Russo WCW is the same as current WWE. It's not that simple. But in terms of, like, because it's a little bit better than what preceded it, people are going fucking nuts over it, is something I'm really noticing is a parallel between the two.
Yeah, I think that's a good show. But yeah, like I say, it's just nothing is particularly good. Like, there's no great angle that's capturing the imagination yet. I do, like, as I mentioned on the previous show, I do think they're doing the right thing by featuring Goldberg a lot. It's just, unfortunately, they're surrounding him with fucking dog shit.
It's like, we need him to be on TV a lot. We don't know what to do once he is on TV, but we know he should be on TV. Well, it's like, it's like, whenever Poochie's not on TV, people should be wondering where Poochie is.
I feel like, because there's going to be so much shit we can bury Russo for, that I'm going to be fairly light-handed early on, because I know I'm going to get plenty of opportunities to bury the man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We haven't even seen Tank Abbott come back yet.
So, but yeah, no, that's it. Winners and losers. I don't think there's any winners or losers on this show, really. Nothing really stood out. Like I say, Chavo was probably the most entertaining part of it.
The finish counter, brought to you by Ludwig Borga, has 9 matches on this show. By the way, 31 segments.
Jesus Christ.
On a 2-hour show. 9 matches, 3 clean finishes, 1 disqualification, 2 interference leading to a finish, 1 miscellaneous shenanigans via chain, and 1 non-finish via Sid. Yes. So, that is episode 86 of Days of Thunder in the bag. Thank you very much for listening. We will be back behind the paywall at largemanappears.com next week. And we'll be back on the free feed with Thunder 87 in 2 weeks. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder was produced by Lee Malone and edited by me, Dave Ryan. To keep up to date with the show and find all the ways to listen to us, you can follow us on Twitter at WCW ThunderPod, or click the Linktree link in our Twitter bio or in the show notes. I am at The Day to Dave on Twitter, and Lee is at Malone_713. Days of Thunder is a part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Follow the VOW network anywhere good podcasts are sold for more fine podcasts than you can shake a stick at. Thanks.
Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.